At the beginning of the season, I picked the Phillies to win it all. Usually that's the kiss of death. I can't determine whether that's the case this year.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 to get 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, I'm speaking fast because I want to get my guest in here now. We're going to be talking about the fighting Phils. We're going to talk about the team that I picked to win the World Series. Usually that is a Michael Corleone kiss of death on Fredo on New Year's Eve. But this year, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like a seer. Sometimes I feel like I'm out of my mind. Sometimes I feel like I'm not. And as the philosopher said, sometimes I don't. And that philosopher's name was the great Michael X. Ferraro, who I've known for literally decades. Great writer, television producer, and has forgotten more about the fighting Phils than most of us have ever known. How are you, Michael?
I am excellent, Sully. It's always great to hear your voice and to join you here on the pod. Wow. The kiss of death. Did you do it to us or not? It's still up in the air, right?
It's completely up in the air. I mean, full disclosure, we're recording this over the weekend. So the Phillies just lost a weird. This was kind of they lost a weird game to the Marlins, and
Right.
This is not last year's Marlins. This is not your older brother's Marlins. This is a team that's going to lose 90, and they may have already lost 90 by the time you're listening to this. They had Nola on the mound, and they got off to they put a run on the board in the first, and yet the final score was a Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, Dolly Parton special. It was 9-5. That's not a way to earn a living. And
No.
ASCAP, all rights reserved. This is a strange team because there are points this team looks like they're going to rampage to a World Series title, and there's sometimes this looks like a classic division series and out year. What do you make of this team, and how excited or worried are you?
Yeah, all of the above, all at once, everything all at once. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Every single day I just have flash forwards to us losing to the Mets or the Braves in the playoffs because it feels like the turnabout would be fair play. I mean, honestly, right? It feels like the Braves deserve to steal one from us this year. That's certainly what if there's any even-handedness from the baseball guys. But as you say, Sully, like some days, some weeks, the Phillies look pretty much, unbeatable. Nola, when he's not locating, likes to give up the long ball. I mean, when we didn't think we were going to re-sign him, and then he wanted to come back, and he's really not an ace. There was that narrative for a few years when Wheeler came. Oh, we have two aces. No, Nola's like a 1A or a 2, but he's a great one.
Yeah.
But when he's not on, he gets hit. So you've got Wheeler, who's contending with Chris Sale for the Cy Young this year, and Ranger Suarez seems to be back. But our lineup is hit and miss. Our situational hitting and our base running is pretty darn bad consistently. So it's a maddening team. It's a frustrating team. And yes, we could go all the way. And yes, we could be one and done.
Well, let's talk about some positive things first here, because first of all, as we're recording this, despite your doom and gloom, as we're recording this, they have the best record in baseball. So
right,
so it's like when I talk to my Yankee fan friends who are talking about we got to clean house, we got to fire everybody. And I said, you have the top seed in the American League right now, and I mean, I understand intellectually. But there's also a moment of like, do you think we can see this glass 3/4 of the way full? I think the Alec Boehm injury is not a good thing. I don't know if he's coming back or not. There was a period of time that Bryce Harper was making a case to be, he's not going to be the MVP because his name is not Shohei Ohtani, and evidently his name isn't Francisco Lindor either.
Right.
But he was certainly owning baseball a lot. But that seems to have cooled down a little bit here.
A lot, actually. I mean, his wrist is not right, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't know why they haven't sat him for a few games. I mean, he's trying to soldier through this. It was his elbow and his wrist. He says his elbow's okay now. You know, Topper had him in the lineup yesterday, and he gets drilled. It's the bench is pretty thin. You know, that's been we had to release Whit Merrifield earlier in the season because I don't pay attention to a lot of those stats, but at that time, Whit Merrifield had the softest. He was 316th out of 316 major leaguers for hardest hit balls off his bat,
which is not good.
It's not so good. And then he came to life a little bit with the Braves, but and now Cody Clemens is up for us, or I like to call him Nepo Babe Ruth, because he's been hitting as his dad said. You know, the kid can rake, so that's helpful. But yeah, you're right. But with Bohm out, and I really think Bryce should be shut down for 2 weeks. I mean, we're up 7.5 as of today.
Right.
Bryce has to get right. If he doesn't get right, we're not going to go.
It's funny. I was gonna bring that up in a bit, but you brought it up now. They have enough. This is why you have a cushion. This is why. I mean, I do not think Atlanta nor New York are going to catch Philadelphia. Now, Milwaukee could, and Los Angeles could, and it may cost them the bye. But as we've seen in the first couple of years they've been doing it, that's not exactly an advantage, having a week off. You know, the Phillies have taken advantage, took advantage of, a very good Atlanta team in back-to-back years who were rusty. Now, I think last year they were pretty evenly matched. But I think when they went to the World Series, Atlanta was clearly the better team, at least in terms of the regular season. And they just looked flat when the Phillies gave them a roundhouse punch to the face. That was, that was the first year they did the wild cards division series, and you had the two clear best teams in the National League, who were Los Angeles and Atlanta. So naturally, the NLCS was San Diego versus Philadelphia. Right. Last year, I think Atlanta and Philly were more evenly matched. I think they were closer, at least in talent. But it may not be the worst thing in the world to play the wild card series and have, and not be that flat and stale. And if having a healthy and on his game Bryce Harper is the result of, as you said, taking a couple of weeks off, I think that's really worth it. This is why you build up this kind of a lead.
Yeah, and I think with a guy like Bryce, who's he's an alpha dog, and a lot of people didn't like him when he was younger and all that stuff. He's really matured a lot with the Phillies. I've come to like him, but he still does have that warrior mentality. Like he should bench himself, but he's not going to. He's one of those guys, which you tip your hat to. But look, if you watch that game today, Sully, I mean, everybody in the stadium was trying to hurt Garrett Stubbs, including Bryce Harper. There's Garrett Stubbs got hit in the back of the head after he had a bunt single, and they made an error at first, so he's running to second, got conked in the back of the head. Then he got hit in the back of the head by a batter's swing, and then there was a foul pop-up toward the Phillies dugout that was clearly Garrett Stubbs' ball, and Bryce was barreling in from first base on the ball. Nobody in the Phillies dugout was calling catcher, catcher, catcher. They all just watched. And he made contact. He clipped Stubbs, and I'm not. Garrett Stubbs is the greatest cheerleader, the greatest dugout chemistry guy, and he's the best bunter on the Phillies. But beyond that, he's not much. But I'm bringing it back to Bryce there. Like I think he's fatigued physically and mentally.
Well, tell you what, when we come back, I want to review the fact that the Phillies had let's just say, a very busy trade deadline, and with about a month and a half removed from the trade deadline, I need to have some of your thoughts. You've heard us talk about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different from you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 to get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every single regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Hey, thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen. For your second listen to more of me, your pal Sully. I am the host of the Locked On A's podcast for the next couple of weeks. The A's have only a couple of weeks left in Oakland, and we're going to have some fun guests, some interesting conversations, because the team is actually pretty entertaining. And the last few weeks, we've talked about Last Dive Bar. We've talked about puppet shows. We've talked about Sacramento. We've talked about the fact that the only thing preventing them from going to Las Vegas right now is money and a design and support. Other than that, they've crossed every T and dotted every I. Listen to the Locked On A's podcast. It's available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. We're here with the great Michael X. Ferraro.
Sell the podcast.
We're just going to sell a lot of things you're doing, because you as always you do a little bit of everything. The Phillies had a really interesting trade deadline, where I picked at the beginning of the year. I said they're going to party like it's 1983, and I picked a Phillies-Orioles World Series, and evidently those two teams thought they could only trade with each other, because it just seemed like they made a couple of things there. They shored up their bullpen, and they picked up a fan favorite from the Orioles who is injured right now. What are your thoughts of the arrival of some of the new faces in the bullpen, especially Mr. Estevez, who seems to have been, in some ways, from my point of view, one of the better pickups?
Yeah, absolutely. Echoes of Al Holland, Sully.
By the way, Echoes of Al Holland has to be a folk album that we record.
I love it. Yeah. You gotta love the Burley closer. He really has solidified that bullpen, which was, the bullpen was lights out for a couple months, and then it really cratered. And then getting him, I mean, post All-Star break, the Phillies were the worst team in baseball for I think about 3 or 4 weeks leading into the All-Star break and right out of. But so getting him really allowed, Strom and Hoffman, and Orion Kerkering has really emerged as, a really dependable third reliever for Thompson. And it just sort of set that bullpen right. And then Hayes, the righty bat, he really hits left-handers. So putting him in the outfield has been helpful as well, too. So was it a huge splashy trade deadline? I don't think.
But I have said, remember there was a lot of big players who were moved around every year, and it's usually someone you're not expecting. Like Marco Scutaro turned out to be the biggest acquisition one year, and believe me, no one put out the headlines "Scutaro acquired," or the year the Red Sox getting Nathan Eovaldi one year and Steve Pearce. And all of a sudden, they become the postseason heroes. You don't always know how the Rubik's Cube is going to be put together. But I also think, because of the way teams are approaching free agency, teams are approaching their stars, you aren't going to see a lot of superstars moved at the deadline anymore. You're going to see more stars locked up earlier, and you're going to see that most teams realize, if we can't get back dollar for dollar value, we're better off not doing it. A couple of years ago, I thought the Angels were absolutely bonkers to not trade Ohtani at the deadline, because they could have gotten something.
Sure.
And I said, either you sign him to a long-term contract now, or you deal them. So, the getting dollar for dollar, that ship has sailed, but you got to get something back. And instead they did the worst thing they possibly could do, which was they went for it. And it didn't work. But, acquiring players, it's like the trade deadline has become less about what big superstar can we get at the deadline and more becoming like the TV show Supermarket Sweep, where you're running through the aisles with the shopping cart, grabbing relievers. It just seems to be how many, can we get a fourth starter or fresh arms?
Yeah. Tanner Banks, the Phil's got Tanner Banks from the White Sox. I mean,
and that's turned out pretty well, right? I mean, Estevez and Banks have been pitching pretty well for them and giving them the depth. I always find it funny though when people, they traded away Sir Anthony Dominguez, which I will admit, the first 40 times I heard his name, I thought his name was Sir Anthony Dominguez.
He had been such a good actor. He was just Anthony, and then the Queen knighted him. That's right. Well,
he did one of the greatest King Lear in the history of the Royal Shakespeare Company, and then came over to pitch for the Phillies. And was he on the World Series team? He was on the team that went to the World Series, right? Or no?
Yes, sure was. Yeah.
Okay. I forgive me. I know the 80 team better than the 2022 team. Right. But he's now with Baltimore. But I actually think it was a pretty decent trade deadline. I mean, they didn't make the giant splash, but they tinkered with the team. And you're right, when you were heading into the All-Star break and in July, they were skidding. They were skidding big time. They needed to do something because the one thing that because it's they had a losing July and they wound up having a winning August, and this weekend was their first loss in September. So they've been 20. They've gone 20-14 since the end of July. So that's not bad. But the one thing Dombrowski is good at is winning now. I'm here to win right now. And so I trust Dombrowski to tinker with the engine and say, all right, what do we need to do with this? What do we need to do here? Because their window of opportunity of winning a World Series is right now.
Yes, agreed. 100%. Yeah, I mean, we could have swung for Jazz Chisholm, and the Yankees wound up getting him. And clearly, he would have been a nice fit because the way he moved to third base. But hey, maybe we'll get to play him in the World Series. Maybe the Phillies.
Who are you playing at third these days? Is it Clemens? Who's
it's been a little bit of a committee, but it is more Clemens. I mean, Sosa can play. Weston Wilson actually plays a little third too.
I like Weston Wilson. Weston Wilson, one of those people. Every time I check in on him, he has 2 hits. So he's hitting well.
And I know you're an aficionado of the cycle, and so he had one of the more dramatic ones this year, needing the double on his last at bat. So that was nice to see.
By the way, Michael Ferraro and I have known each other since 2007, and for whatever reason, that little snarky comment you just heard is based on the fact that I am fascinated by players hitting for the cycle, and you, it does not faze you. It's not like you look down on it. It's just you don't understand what the deal is.
Right, because it's and I love you, Sully. I wrote a book called "Numbelievable" about the greatest numbers in sports history.
Yes,
but to me, it's a random bit of business. I mean, three doubles in a homer game is not, nobody cares. You're just a blip. But if you hit for the cycle, my God,
it's fun. It's called
it's
fun.
The complete set. It's fun. I get it.
It's fun. It's fun. Why have you forgotten fun? All right, you know all about Gametime. Gametime is the place to get tickets for any live event. Not just baseball, not just football or basketball, but for theater, for comedy, for concerts. And Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And they have all-in pricing, which means you do not get any surprise fees at the end. And the curation for Gametime picks makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. You get a panoramic view for the seat in the app before you apply with Seat Views, the lowest price guaranteed. Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. And Gametime ticket coverage has your tickets covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. That was a flawless ad read, by the way.
Oh, man.
Oh, but hey, there's a reminder that Locked On has created the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. It's Locked On Sports Today. It's available on YouTube and on Amazon TV and the free Amazon Fire TV channel app. Check out for the latest news, takes, and the best personalities of the Locked On Podcast Network. I show up there from time to time. Locked On Sports Today. It's available and part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. All right.
You're a great sports personality.
I try. I absolutely try to be. And if I can make it, then there you go. Wait, what was the last? What did we just? Was that FanDuel or Gametime we just did?
I just filtered out the fluff. I think it was Gametime.
I think it was Gametime too. I can't remember what we just read. Anyway,
I'm not beholden to sponsors, so I don't know. I don't listen. I just listen to the pros and your dulcet pipes.
Oh, yes. By the way,
these are two great ads you read. 2 more and you'll have hit for the cycle of ad reads.
That's right. But is it a home run or a double? All right. You and I have known each other for a while. When you and I met, the Phillies were really on the verge of one of their great runs because we met in 2007, and they won the division against the Metropolitans.
Jimmy Rollins remembers.
And then they won it all the next year, a little help of with some rain. And then Charlie Manuel realized too late that he'd have to go to Bradlidge every time in 2009. Yeah. Then they ran into a fellow named Cody Ross in 2010. But don't worry, they're going to sweep through 2011. And I remember you and I, when you were on the old podcast in 2011, and we were having a conversation. If and when the Phillies win the 2011 World Series, will this be the greatest Philadelphia team in their history?
Sure.
All right. So let's say this club, who's already won a pennant and came this close to making it back-to-back pennants last year, if they win it all, where does this team fit in so far? I mean, and does this put Bryce Harper in the pantheon of Philadelphia sports legends?
Yes. Sure. If they win, he's in the pantheon for sure. I mean, he's pretty darn close. But he's got to rest for 2 weeks, as we've prescribed. If not, it's all for naught. But no, I think even if this team, I mean, who knows? I mean, that's what's so great about baseball, because we don't know what stories there are to be told. You asked me about Sir Anthony Dominguez being on the roster. I checked the roster during the break, the World Series roster in 2022, and noticed that Nick Nelson was on our staff then, and now he's back up with the Phillies because he's got a knuckleball. The reason I bring that up is because we just don't know what's going to happen. We don't know who's going to be important. You mentioned Steve Pearce with the Red Sox and Scutaro, these heroes. Mm-hmm. So this Phillies team has the ingredients. I fully expect Bryson Stott to hit 450 from now till the end of the season, because he really was laying an egg for most of the year. And he's a guy that, if you listen to Phillies broadcasts and other broadcasters the past couple of years, everyone said this guy's going to win a batting title one day. And gosh, if he wasn't hitting below Johan Rojas a couple weeks ago, he's but Bryson's starting to swing it. He's starting to. He was the best 2-strike hitter in baseball 2 years ago, and he could as a lefty, he just flick doubles down that left field line, go with the pitch. He was not doing that this year. He's starting to lock in. We've had so many guys up and down. I mean, Nick Castellanos, people scream for him to be gone. He single-handedly beat the Braves in the playoffs last year.
Right.
And then he disappeared against Arizona. I mean, he was a wreck. He was a mess. You throw him at anything outside breaking, and he's just going to wave. And then he brought us back this past month too. So who knows? Like it's the ingredients are there. Could be the greatest. We don't have the pitching that the 2011, the starting pitching that
Yeah.
2011 did, but in terms of names now, I would say that. But who knows what kind of career Ranger Suarez is going to have, or Christopher Sanchez moving forward. But hey, I'll take a World Series ring no matter how we get it.
And lest we forget, Schwarber last year hit 5 home runs in the NLCS.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Why can't the Red Sox get players like Kyle Schwarber? I've never seen a leadoff hitter like this man before, because you and I grew up where the leadoff hitter is supposed to look like Ricky Henderson, supposed to look like Tim Raines, supposed to look like Brett Butler, contact, speed, and you have this guy who on first glance looks like he's in the Matt Stair, Steve Balboni beer softball league, and he currently leads the league in walks. He seems to be able to homer at will, and
sometimes.
And if he gets hot, I mean, he is kind of the key in so many ways. If he gets hot, this is going to be, this team could go far. And by the way, I'll just say the other thing that's going in the Phillies' favor, say that 3 times fast in terms of going somewhere in the postseason, is Los Angeles is having some major injury issues. Yeah. We don't know what's happening with Teoscar Hernandez. Boy, they could really use Jason Hayward right now. Their rotation is a bit of a cut and paste. Right. They asked if Doug Rao was available, and is Tim Belcher available?
Yeah, he's golfing with Rick Rhoden, I believe. Yeah.
But Milwaukee is a team I'd be really nervous about, because they've been slow and steady wins the race. They have not had a huge slump or a huge slide, and they can pitch very well too. So, but we'll see what happens. But I the other teams' injuries and inconsistencies could work in the Phillies' favor.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I fear the Braves or the Mets more than I fear the Dodgers. And I live out here in LA, and I see that Dodgers team. I mean, they're a great team. They could certainly win it all, but the pitching is so iffy, and I think the Phillies will feast. I don't want to play the Braves. Chris Sale is lights out. If he's lights out against us, that's one win, for them right away. So.
And by the way, Red Sox fans, I don't hear anyone complaining about that. We all thought he was cooked. Everybody thought he was cooked. Nobody saw this comeback season coming from Sale.
How many great seasons away from the Hall of Fame do you think he is? Like 3?
3. Yeah. I think he's still in that Brett Saberhagen, Frank Viola, Oral Hershiser, Fernando sort of. His peak is incredibly high. Yeah. Postseason hero, but it doesn't have the Mussina or Halladay length to their greatness.
Yeah. He's only 140 wins or something like that right now, somewhere in that. But 6 straight years in the top 6 for Cy Young voting.
It's going to be an interesting discussion. I still think he's in the that Valenzuela, Guidry, Hershiser, Saberhagen, Viola. Think about all those great people who Gooden, who had those peaks and led their team to a championship, but didn't have the sustained. I still think he's in that category right now. But but I also, after going to Cooperstown this year, I don't hold grudges. I don't stand in front of I didn't stand in front of Harold Baines's plaque shaking my fist. It's like, okay, Harold Baines is there, fine. I don't. I'm not gonna. It doesn't make me mad. I'll move on to Willie Stargell.
That's right.
Just move on to Stargell.
You brought up Schwarber earlier, and I mean, I was against him leading off, because I guess maybe I'm more of an old school purist or whatever. But you really do. It's the only leadoff hitter. He starts the game in scoring position every time. Well, him and Ohtani obviously, but yeah.
I want him getting an extra at bat. It's like the speed part of it is so overrated because that really only matters to lead off the game. I would rather have him coming around, and if he doesn't club one out of the ballpark, he'll get on base. I think it's great. Hey, before we finish up here, plug away. What are some of the things you want people to know you for or follow you?
Oh my goodness, they're all gonna be. I mean, I still contribute some baseball poetry to bardball.com, which I think I've mentioned to you before, and the listeners should check that out. James Finn Gardner and Stuart Shea run that out of Chicago, and there's a lot of really great baseball doggerel and verse and songs. So I highly recommend that. I've not been contributing as much, but love to give it a shout out.
Yeah.
And Sully, I'm making some documentaries. I've got one that's going to be playing a festival this fall. I can't name where yet, but it's called "Look at My Furniture: The Mutant Birth Story of David Lynch Has a Painting Made of Flies' Eyes."
Well, if I had a nickel for how many docs I've seen with titles like that, I'd be a very wealthy man.
My buddy Butch Vig, the great rock musician and producer, did a song called "David Lynch Has a Painting Made of Flies' Eyes" with the Silver Sun pickups. And we made a very odd little origin documentary about that. So that will be playing this fall. And I'm also working on a feature doc now about a great singer-songwriter named Freedy Johnston, who you may remember from the 90s. He had a
I know that name. I remember that name.
Yeah, had a song called Bad Reputation, and the Farrelly Brothers. Yeah. Freedy is also a fine artist, and he just finished painting a mural in his hometown of Kinsley, Kansas, which you'll like this. Kinsley is called Midway, USA, because it's 1,561 miles from San Francisco and 1,561 miles from New York City.
That's awesome.
Freedy and the great Kansas muralist Dave Lowenstein, no relation to the former Orioles outfielder but I sent the John Lowenstein baseball card to Dave's son Andres recently. Freedy and Dave collaborated on this beautiful mural, and I'm directing and producing a feature-length doc on Freedy Johnston, which will be out sometime next year. But he's making great new music, and I highly recommend people check him out on Spotify. Freedy, Freedy, like Roger Freed.
By the way, check out John Lowenstein. Had one of my favorite walk-off home run celebrations where he basically celebrated like it was VJ Day as he was circling the bases of the 79 playoffs, which takes us to the trivia question. It's Phillies based. Don't you answer it. Two current members of the Baseball Hall of Fame are the only two pitchers to win 200 games as members of the Phillies. Which two Hall of Famers are the only two people to win 200 games while wearing the Phillies uniform? That is, put your answer down here at YouTube or at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about the fighting Phils, who I picked to win them all. Will they do that? With a great and always eclectic and talented Michael X. Ferraro, poet, writer. What? What do you say? I'm trying to wrap up.
I forgot to plug one other thing.
Okay, go plug it. I'm trying to wrap up the damn show.
I'm also a country singer named of Zeke Bleek, Bleek, and you can check that out on Spotify, Sully. My single is 26 X's. Thank you.
Guess what? We all knew that. Talking to Zeke Bleek, a.k.a. Michael X. Ferraro. This has been Locked On MLB. Let's end this. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me what?
Sully.